is taking Pharaoh step by step. First is the knowledge. And the knowledge is simply interpreting the dream. But he does not leave it there. He does not say, okay, this is what will happen. 7 years of plenty, 7 years of famine, bye-bye. When God reveals, he does not just give you the knowledge. He also gives you the wisdom. How do you go about it? How do you go about it? And that is what we find in verse 34. Now it is wisdom. These men need to collect 1/5 of the produce of the land of Egypt in the 7 plentiful years, and let them gather all the food of those good years that are coming, and store up grain under the authority of Pharaoh, and let them keep food in the cities. Then that food shall be as a reserve for the land for the 7 years of famine, which shall be in the land of Egypt, that the land may not perish during the famine. That is the goal. So this is a divine formula. I need to say, this is a divine formula. And this is wisdom. And the wisdom here is dual. I've learned that God, if you just want to reason out, just try to reason out, 100%, 80% will be enough for 7 years. You've kept 20%. And then 20% will take care of another 7 years, an equivalent amount of time or length of time. That is not rational thinking. That is not academic thinking. That is not what we are used to. We should have said, keep 50%. Use 50% for 7 years. And then 50% for another 7 years. But he says, you will be consuming 80% for 7 years. Keep 20. It will be enough for another 7 years. But if you read, continue reading, it will not only be enough, the 20% will not only be enough for the Egyptians for 7 years, but it will take care of even nations beyond Egypt. What do I learn from that? That things of God does not require proof or science or even rational thinking. You do not take the things of God to the laboratory and put them in a test tube and observe and conclude that this is the best way to go. The things of God require faith and obedience. I have also learned something in this principle. I can connect this to Malachi chapter 3 verse 8 when it comes to our givings of tithes and offerings. Tithe 10% and then offerings 10% plus. So anyone who gets into this formula, you now know from this principle here, you now know that when you are in the systematic benevolence, you are saving. I have also learned another thing in this particular section of Scripture, that we need to save during the good years. It is knowledge to know that there will be famine, or there will be plenty and then famine. That is knowledge. It is wisdom to save, to act appropriately as God has directed for the future. I need to bring this close. I have seen people who have found seasons of plenty. Seasons of plenty. Maybe they even have good jobs, well-paying jobs or reasonable jobs. They work there until they retire. When it is time to go home, they don't have a home. And they die very fast. Sometimes they wait for their their benefits, and they use their benefits to build their homes. What if you've decided to take all your benefits to build a house and you don't finish it? What happens? During the good years, you did not plan for the years of famine. When you are still young and energetic and ruddy, you did not plan for your future. You wasted your years. You did not consider the future. You are not guided by wisdom to move and act circumspectly as pleases the Lord. You are not reserved. You are not careful in many things. You lived a reckless life. You wanted to live the future at the moment. You are a student. You are very young. You do not have the cash. You decide to get into affairs of the marriage. You're taking it in advance, and you think when that time will come, things will remain the same. Sometimes when it is time for family, you are now so sick. Sometimes when it is now time for family, you cannot give birth. Sometimes when it is time for family, you are so much used to multiple relationships. When you are still young, you get into marriage and you should be very faithful to your spouse, but because you are used to many, you can't afford to stay with one. You are spoiled. During the years of plenty, we need to have wisdom so that we can live smartly for the years of famine. I go to verse 38. Today time is running so fast. When all these were revealed, the Bible tells me from verse 37, so the advice was given, was good in the eyes of Pharaoh and in the eyes of all his servants. And Pharaoh said to his servants, can we find such a one as this, a man in whom is the Spirit of God? Can we find such a one as this, a man in whom is the Spirit of Elohim? You know, we are talking about something interesting in this verse. Perhaps it is the first time we find the Spirit of God on someone recorded in the Bible. So Joseph is the first one recorded in the Bible. But the first time you find the name Elohim appearing in Scripture, it is in the book of Genesis, chapter 1, verse 1. In the beginning, Elohim. And so, who is Pharaoh describing? Which God is Pharaoh speaking about? He is talking about the one who exercises extraordinary control over affairs of the universe. That is the person that Pharaoh is describing. Yet he was a heathen. In Joseph, he is able to see the God who is extraordinary. The God who will not fail to reveal the things that human beings and other gods cannot handle. And in verse 41, without election, without consulting departmentals, without doing any other thing, he gives Joseph the responsibility to become ruler over the entire Egypt. I'm talking about the ultimate promotion. He gives him a signet ring. The signet ring is a symbol of authority. And with that ring is also the seal of authority for the government of Egypt. It's like a rubber stamp or a seal for that matter. He gives him a gold chain. In verse 42, he gives him garment of fine linen. You remember this man, who is now 30 years old, has lost some special garments. He lost the robe, the multicolored garments that his father gave him. He lost it. The brothers took it away and stained it and threw it away. That garment was meant to indicate that Joseph is in charge of the home of his father. He lost it. I'm sure he cried about it. So sometimes God can take some things away from you because he wants you to allow or give room for bigger things. When he gets into Pharaoh's house, we also know that he lost some garments. That garment that was used as evidence that he was a rapist. He lost it, but we know he was innocent. He lost it. But when he lost all those things with humility and with reverence to God and committed to God, devoted to God, God finally gives him what he wanted him to have, a fine linen. That he will be in charge of Egypt and the then known world. He's given several other things. When you check verse 43, he's given affluence. He's given a chariot. He will be riding on a chariot. In verse 44, something is interesting in verse 44. Pharaoh also said to Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without your consent, no man may lift his hand. Where do we lift our hands? When we are legislating, when we are discussing, we are talking about anything, implementing anything, nobody will do any legislation. Nobody will do any transactions. That becomes even matters of law without the consent of Joseph. Or foot in the land of Egypt. That is to say, if you want to get out of Egypt, Joseph must know. If you are coming in, Joseph must know. Another thing that he gets, which also is interesting to me, is given a name, Zaphenath-Paneah. You find that in verse 45, and Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaphenath-Paneah. And that name is also very special. It is Coptic, Egyptic, to mean the revealer of secret things. In verse 45, Joseph is also given a wife. When Mrs. Potiphar wanted to mess her up, I don't know what would have been his fate, but now he has a wife. Officially, he has a wife, given by the king, Pharaoh, the ruler of the land. If you read down, you come to verse 50, the Bible tells me, and to Joseph were born 2 sons before the years of famine came, whom Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On, bore to him. Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh. What was the meaning of this name? Causing to forget. God is on a trip to expunge the sad memories, the pains that he has had in his life. And he has a child to remind him every day that God is causing you to forget. He has a second son, and his name is Ephraim. The meaning is double ash heap, to indicate that God has made him to be double fruitful. He's going to live well. People around him are going to live well. And you can foresee he's going to make sure that his family is alive. God will not forsake his children. He did not forsake Daniel in Babylon. He did not forsake Esther in Medo-Persia. He did not forsake Job in the land of Uz. He will not forsake you if you love him, if you are obedient, if you are faithful to him. He will not forsake you. His brothers felt that the action, whatever they did, was an excellent action. But Paul says in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 25, for the foolishness of God is wiser than men, and the weakness of God stronger than men. So where men have done their worst, where Satan has done his worst, that is where you will see the goodness of the Lord. The book of Joel chapter 2, verse 25 is also reminding us that God will restore to you the years that the swarming locust has eaten. The hopper, the destroyer, and the cutter may my great army which I sent among you, God will restore you. Tonight, my brothers and sisters, I want us to pray. But I want to pray that just like in a moment, very quickly, in a very short time,